This has never happened before. The restorative drug must be losing its strength.
Unseen by the servants, he slipped into the laboratory and prepared a double dose of the restorative drug. The double dose was effective. Restored to the personality of Jekyll, he summoned Poole.
Take this note to Mr. Moore and tell that thieving pharmacist that unless he fills my prescription exactly as ordered, I shall take my business elsewhere.
Yes, sir. When Poole left, Dr. Jekyll sank into a chair, exhausted by the conflict within him, and fearful that the personality of Hyde would soon control his entire being. One fine morning Dr. Jekyll was seated in Regent's Park, engrossed in his thoughts and becalmed by the scenic beauty all about him. Suddenly, he became conscious of a change in his thoughts, and was overcome by a horrid nausea and most deadly shuddering. He looked down, and to his horror, his clothes hung formlessly on his shrunken limbs. The hand resting on his knee was corded and hairy.
The drug has failed me again. I shall never be able to get back to the laboratory now. Just a moment ago I had the respect of my fellow men, wealthy, beloved, and now I am hunted, homeless, and a known murderer.
Shielding his face from passers-by, he slipped out of the park and down a side street. Suddenly, Hyde thought of Dr. Lanyon, a colleague and friend of Dr. Jekyll.
Lanyon, that's it. Dr. Lanyon will help me. I must find a way to communicate with him.
Luckily, escaping detection, he reached an inn and was shown into a private room.
Shall I bring you anything, sir? Paper and pen, if you please, and hurry.
A few minutes later, he had written 2 letters, one to Dr. Lanyon and the other to Poole, Jekyll's butler. The letters posted, he sat in the private room, impatiently waiting for nightfall. When night finally came, Hyde hailed a closed cab and was driven to and fro about the streets of the city. Dr. Lanyon, a well-known physician and friend of both Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Utterson, was dumbfounded when he read the letter addressed to him by Dr. Jekyll. Although the letter seemed to have been written by a man robbed of his senses, his loyalty to his friend impelled him to carry out his wishes as quickly as possible. He drove straight to Dr. Jekyll's house, where the butler awaited his arrival.
I have received a note from my master instructing me to admit you into his laboratory, sir.
Following instructions, Dr. Lanyon removed a drawer from one of the cabinets.
This must be the drawer.
Wrapping it in a sheet, he returned with it to his own study. There he awaited the arrival of the messenger who was to call for the drawer.
This is utterly fantastic. Poor Jekyll, his mind must be greatly troubled.
At exactly midnight, Dr. Lanyon opened the door in response to a knock.
You have been expecting me, sir. Come in, if you please. You are the... Yes, sir. I am the messenger from Dr. Jekyll. Jekyll must be either bewitched or out of his mind to entrust an important message to such a vicious-looking fellow.
As they entered the study, Hyde cried out excitedly,
Have you got it? Have you got it?
Lanyon was conscious of an icy pang in his veins.
Come, sir, you forget that I have not yet had the pleasure of your acquaintance.
Hyde controlled his feelings in an effort to be civil.
I beg your pardon, Dr. Lanyon, but I am here at the insistence of your colleague, Dr. Jekyll, on a piece of business of some moment. I understood that a drawer... There it is, sir.
Hyde sprang to the table and, visibly shaken, placed his hand over his heart.
Calm yourself, sir, calm yourself.
Hyde soon regained his composure and pulled off the sheet.
Will you have the kindness to get me a glass, sir?
Obtaining the glass, Hyde mixed the various ingredients.
Dr. Lanyon, remember your vows. What follows is under the seal of your profession. Behold!
Gulping down the draught, Hyde reeled, staggered, and clutched at the table. The transformation took place before the unbelieving eyes of Dr. Lanyon. There stood Dr. Jekyll, pale, shaken, and half fainting like a man restored from death.
Good heavens, this can't be real. It's just a horrible nightmare. Jekyll, how can this be? I cannot tell you that. I can only pray you decide to keep this dreaded secret of mine.
After again receiving Lanyon's promise of secrecy, Jekyll left. Lanyon then dropped into his chair as though in a daze.
Alas, this is no dream. The creature who was here a few moments ago was Edward Hyde, wanted for murder in every corner of the land. Poor, poor Jekyll.
A few days later, Utterson received a visit from Poole. "Bless me, Poole, what brings you here? Is the doctor ill?"
There is something wrong, sir.
Wrong, you say?
Dr. Jekyll has shut himself in his laboratory, and I don't like it, sir. Mr. Utterson, sir, I'm afraid.
Explain yourself, Poole.
I've been afraid for more than a week, and can bear it no more, sir. I think there's been foul play, sir, and I wish you would come along and see for yourself.
They hurried to Dr. Jekyll's house. The door was opened slightly by a servant.
Is that you, Poole? Yes, I've brought Mr. Utterson.
In the study, they found all the servants gathered around the hearth, talking excitedly. "What are they doing here? It seems to me your master would be far from pleased."
They're all afraid, sir.
Poole led Utterson to the laboratory door and knocked.
Listen carefully to the voice, sir. Mr. Utterson, sir, asking to see you. Tell him I cannot see anyone.
The butler led Mr. Utterson through the yard to the kitchen of the house.
Sir, was that my master's voice?
It seems much changed.
I've been 20 years in this house, sir, and I would swear that is not the doctor's voice. No, sir. My master was done away with 8 days ago when we heard him cry out in anguish.
This is a strange tale, Poole. Supposing your master was murdered, as you fear, what could induce the murderer to stay? It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, Mr. Utterson, you are a hard man to satisfy, but I'll tell you just what's been happening the past week. About a week ago I heard a loud banging at the door. Poole, come here at once. I'm here, sir. What is it? There's a paper under the door. Take it to the pharmacist. Be quick about it. Am I to wait for a message, sir? You will bring back a drug Mr. Moore will give you, and you are to leave it here on the floor. Now, in heaven's name, Poole, hurry! I went immediately. My master, Dr. Jekyll, wants this filled immediately. Mr. Moore asked me to wait and left the note lying on the counter. I glanced at it. The drug you have been sending me is of poorer quality than I have obtained from you previously. I pray you, sir, help me out with some of the old quality. It is most urgent that I receive some at once. Henry Jekyll, M.D. Mr. Moore soon returned.
Tell your master I cannot obtain the drug he desires, as he himself took the last from my shelf some time ago.
When I gave Mr. Moore's answer to my master, or that man inside, whoever he may be, he was furious, and carried on like a madman, sir.
Do you have the note with you?
Here it is, sir.
Utterson read the note and shook his head sadly. This is indeed a strange note, and in the doctor's own handwriting. Don't you think, Poole?
But what matter is his handwriting? I've really seen him.
Seen him?
One night he slipped out of the door and I caught him before he could get back. I tell you, sir, he was a most hideous monster, more like a dwarf with clothes too large for his frame.
Utterson was now convinced that there had been foul play. Summon the footmen at once, Poole. We're going to break that door down. When the footmen arrived, they proceeded to batter the door down. Inside, they found a body sprawled on the floor. It is Hyde, and from every appearance, he has done away with himself.
But where is my master? What has this monster done to him?
That, Poole, is a mystery for the police to solve. We can only hope he will be found alive. When Utterson returned to his study, he found a note waiting for him. It was from Dr. Lanyon, relating the experience of that terrible night at his home. Poor Jekyll, how he must have suffered. A genius in his profession, he was victim of his own folly. The end.